Hello. Welcome to one more business platform program. My name is George Bruff, and on this program, we give you mindsets, behaviors, and tools that will help you as a small and medium-sized business owner double your productivity without spending any money at all. Practical tools, tips, and help to guide you through the times that we're dealing with today, and more importantly than just guide you through, make sure that you're taking advantage of the opportunities. And today, as usual, we have a very, very special guest. I'm delighted to have Nigel Risner here with us. Nigel is a consultant, an author, a speaker, a font of wisdom, and he's here to help share some of his experiences, some of his tools, some of his techniques with us today. Nigel, thank you ever so much for joining us. It's a real pleasure to have you. Please tell the audience a little bit about you and your work and your background.
Well, it's very kind of you to invite me onto your platform, and honored to be here. So I'm a motivational speaker, keynote speaker, leadership coach, but more importantly, I'm a communications expert, otherwise known as the Zookeeper. And I'll tell you why we come up with that title in a minute, but I've been involved in commercial finance. I was involved in coaching tennis in my previous life. I ran a commercial finance company. I made a lot of money, lost a lot of money, remade my money. And what I realized when I was making money, that actually making money is not that complicated. Working with people is exceptionally complicated. And so over the years, and I've now been on the road, well, I've been on the road 22 years. The last year, I've not been on the road as much as you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
But I've literally spoken to over 2.5 million people in 70 countries all over the world, sharing two key messages: how to create impact and how to effectively communicate. And those two things together make a phenomenal human being, whether it's with your family, whether it's with your staff, whether it's with your clients, whether it's with yourself, because we speak about mindset, that how you communicate internally affects how you communicate externally. How you create relationships at home affects your relationships in the workplace, and vice versa. So everything that I do is about, is what you're doing right now going to make an impact? And if it's not, why are you doing it? And is how you're communicating going to be heard by 98% of the world? There's 2% who won't hear you, whatever you do. Mm-hmm. So can you get your message out to 98% of the world in a clear, concise, considerate manner that people will then take action with, so it's not just information? Yeah. If it was just information, you wouldn't need to do a podcast. You just send people sheets of paper and they'd read it and we go, that's okay. But if you want people to do things and take action, you've got to share a message that they can understand, make it applicable, and make it actionable. And I think the world is missing some of that. Yeah. Slightly long introduction, but that's who I am.
No, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. One of the reasons why I wanted you on here is exactly for that. And one of the things I love about doing this program is just how international we are. I mean, I'm Scottish. I live in Brazil. I've lived here for 23 years. You're based in the UK, and you have clients all over the place. I wanted to start just by having a general kind of panorama of what's your view of the world of business at the moment. You know, but we're either in the middle of the pandemic or coming out of the pandemic or thinking about post-pandemic. But what's your view of where we are right now in terms of the world of business?
Well, it's really interesting you asked that question because, I lived in Israel for 2 years and I played professional tennis and I coached. And there is a country that is used to military law, quote unquote, that, you say everyone's got to be inside and everyone's inside. 96% of the population have had nearly their second vaccination now. And so now they're a country that is fully open. You've now got Australia and New Zealand today announced they can now travel together because they're tiny islands that have made it work. The problem is when you have a country the size of Brazil, which is just vast, when you have a country like the UK, which let millions of people in for a very long time, that the world is coming round, but there's a couple of issues that I think, and this is just me sharing, a lot of people aged between 24 and 45 have now seen what it's like to work from home and are going to struggle going back to the workplace.
Yeah.
The 46-year-old to 66-year-olds who'd like to take back control, who never wanted it to be the way it was, are going to start struggling with, I'm 58 and my son is 34 for 90% of the work he can do from home.
Yeah.
And so, but that's now been proven. The problem is what's happening is there's a lack of communication. There's a lack of spirit. There's a lack of energy. And so you've got this dilemma that if you had an accountant who in theory never had to see another human being again for the next 20 years, he'd be in his element. So the pandemic for them is phenomenal. Mm-hmm. If you're a live wire, you know, I need people, I love people, but I've done a year on Zoom and I've been in Sri Lanka, I've been in Australia, I've been, you know, obviously the Americas, but I've done countries that I would not normally be able to do very easily within an hour.
Yeah.
So there's a change that the world is changing, but there's a lot of people who can't adapt to change. Yeah. And as I always share, we can deal with change, we just can't deal with uncertainty. So we still have uncertainty today. You know, if you think about Europe right now, you wouldn't want to be going to France, Belgium, Germany from the UK because their numbers are just out of this world. Whereas, you know, the UK have been very tough the last 8-9 weeks. It's going to be interesting as we start opening up a little bit because next week the shops open. But we've rolled out our vaccines very well. So from a world business point of view, I think there's going to be massive highs and some real lows. You know, the hospitality industry is going to come back, you know, pubs, hotels, restaurants. The world of the finance and law have just got to adapt. So the senior partners are going to struggle. Yeah. But there's another issue, and I'm going on about this a little bit too long. Staff who aren't being seen by their bosses are going to have some issues.
Yeah.
Because people are going to be doing great work and even more work than they were doing before. But unless you're being seen, I think there's going to be some challenges. Yeah. And so we are coaching some leaders to say, you need to be doing coach and walk sessions. You need to be doing more than just Zoom town hall meetings.
Yeah.
You know, then you've got something like Clubhouse where people are just online hearing voices, but physically without touching, but physically face to face. I think there's going to be an issue and it's going to take a bit longer to deal with than anybody thinks.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, I think one of the things we're seeing is this old command and control model. Thankfully, you know, it was already past its sell-by date. Thankfully, it's now fallen apart, right? Because it just physically doesn't. It never did work, and it's now physically doesn't work with the distance and everything. So the focus on getting to know your people, understanding your people, figuring out how to put your people in a position to be successful, and giving them individually the help and support that's the focus that a leader needs now, which all comes back to the communication piece. So when you walk into, you know, any kind of size business, but, you know, let's say a small, medium-sized business, and, you know, they were used to everyone sitting in the same office in Staines or Milton Keynes or whatever, right? And now everyone's at home. How do you start helping them figure out, how do we communicate in a way that's effective these days?
Brilliant question. But there's an issue. Unless your place of work is an exciting place to work and there's a purpose to go there, and, you know, it's a bit like this Zoom call. We can do all of this from literally 10,000 miles apart. We can produce phenomenal quality. But why would I want to come all the way to you or vice versa if it's just going to be this? Yeah. It's got to be something exciting. There's got to be some new product. There's got to be some new knowledge. There's got to be some new sharing. The problem is, going back to the command control, there are a lot of people who want to see their people working.
Yeah.
And even though the results have been better in a way, because what's happening is, and I don't know if you know these, but the numbers of people who are working longer hours at home, but they're not traveling, is slightly weird. So you've got people who, you know, go online at 7, they're in their pajamas, they're having coffee, they're online doing some emails, then they might take their dog for a walk, then they're doing more emails, they don't have a proper lunch hour, they're doing emails, and then at 4, they might, if the kids are coming back from school, might take half an hour off, but their phones are still on, but they might work till 6 or 7, but they haven't had 2 hours, 3 hours of travel.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, now I then say to you, I'd like you to come into the office. Right, so you've now got to get dressed and showered at 6:45, get through the traffic, go on a bus, a train, park your car, look like you're interested at 5 to 9 to have a meeting to tell you what you already knew. And so I have a whole big thing about meetings, which is most of it's a waste of time. Then, we're going to do a bit of work. We're going to walk back to our workplace to do a bit of typing, and then we're going to go on a computer. Then there's going to be a Zoom call for people who aren't there for various reasons, or in another office. Then we're going to have an hour for lunch because I'm going to take my hour. And then at 3:45, get ready for this, our brain is now tuning out because it's time to go home.
Yeah.
Our mindset is such that when we're at home, we're virtually doing the reverse.
Yeah.
We're feeling guilty because we're not in the office, so we better prove we're doing a lot of work. We are walking, talking. I had my phone. I walked my dog this morning, and I had a phone call while I was in a field or a forest or a park. I did the same work that if I'd have been in an office, did it in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
If I'd have had to have gone somewhere and then had to wait for coffee and tea and all the other stuff, and then I had to have driven home. Well, there is a balance, though, that I think people need people. Don't want to go into song here, but people do need people.
Yeah.
But it's got to be a purpose.
Yes.
And I think the world has forgotten that we need a purpose to communicate. We need a purpose to meet.
Yes.
And if there's no purpose, so I talk a lot about
meeting. We need a purpose to work. I mean, people forget, nobody should be working for their wages, right? The wages are a consequence of the work that you do, but you work for a reason to produce something of value.
But it's worse than that, George. I want you to understand a typical meeting. Let's suppose we had a board meeting, okay? What's the very first thing on the board meeting? Do you know what the very first thing is on the board meeting?
Usually the minutes of the last.
Something before that.
All right.
Apologies for all those who aren't there. So I'm now here, and now I've got to listen to all the people who aren't here. That's the first thing. Then we're going to have the minutes of the previous meeting, which I've got a copy of, which if I could have been asked, I'd have read. Then there might be something interesting. And then we finish with, do you know what we finish with every board meeting? 3 letters.
Any other business?
Yeah, it should be any interesting business.
Yeah.
I don't need other shit, pardon my French. I want it to be interesting.
Of course.
So far, that whole 2 hours, which, by the way, and you'll know this from the past, the cost of setting up that meeting, somebody had to send out invites, somebody had to prepare all the documents, somebody had to find a room, then we had to take tea and coffee, etc. Then we had to fly or drive people in, then we had to do parking, all that stuff for something that we actually call 20 minutes of possibly interesting stuff. Because the networking bit, if there was Gordon, who you know and I know, and you, and there was 3 other people, and we were going to be meeting for social, I'd be up for that.
Sure.
But no, what we're doing is we're coming for a meeting to discuss the past. I don't need to be there for that.
Yeah.
So if you think about how many meetings, first of all, last longer than 42 minutes. So I have a rule that any meeting that lasts longer than 42 minutes is a waste of time because you just can't retain information. So most meetings are way longer than 42 minutes. If meetings are in the afternoon, people are tired. And after 5 o'clock, they've mentally left the room. So there's not much purpose for most of the day. And I don't want to be traveling at, the traffic in England. I've either got to leave at 6 o'clock in the morning or I've got to leave at 10. I don't want to get caught in traffic. So if I'm going to leave at 10 to be at a meeting for 11, why? Unless there's information that I've not seen, it's going to be brainstorming, but we still can do some of this here.
Well, but also there's the criminal sin of confusing activity with productivity. It's like we got through the agenda. It's like, okay, how many decisions were made, right? How much further forward are you to achieving the objectives? Well, we don't really have objectives. We have the agenda items. It's like, what's the point? What's the idea of I work with projects all the time. We do business transformation projects. And the first thing I tell the team is you do not get the work done in the meetings. Meetings are incredibly unproductive for getting work done in groups, right? Meetings are there for you to make decisions if you've got some good meeting and decision-making tools, maybe to get aligned if necessary. And certainly the social side, which people forget, like 20% of the meeting should be you getting to know someone else so that you can trust them or understand what they're doing while they're doing the work between the meetings. And they don't get it. It takes them 3 months before the penny drops that, having a meeting once a week in this 12-month project isn't actually going to get us to where we need to get to.
So I worked with EasyJet, who I know you know. Can I do an exercise with you live?
Please, absolutely.
Okay, I'd like you to stand up. I'd like you to turn around and face your chair. Is your chair empty or full?
It's empty.
Your job, if you work for EasyJet, is to fill it. Take your seat.
Yeah.
EasyJet's basic law of a meeting is bums on seats. If the meeting isn't going to get more bums on seats, why are we having the meeting?
Yeah.
And you have permission to leave the meeting if it's not going to create more bums on seats. Now, let's think about that in a general sense that, we're doing a podcast for us to share ideas so we can help hundreds of other people around the world learn from the two of us. Yeah. Well, that's a purpose for this meeting.
Yes.
If we're just going to talk about holiday snaps, I can send you mine, you can send me yours, and we'll have a lovely time.
Yeah.
So let's just tell the world who's listening that we're sharing information that's going to add value to improve your life. And if you don't think it's going to improve your life, don't listen.
Yeah.
But what we don't want you to do is come in 3 hours to a meeting to find out it was a waste of time because we didn't add value to your life.
Well, so there's another piece as well, which and this works for meetings as well, and works for this podcast, is I keep telling people, just being there doesn't make it happen, right? It's like there's a process to have. I keep telling people you have to do stuff with what we give you, right? If I give you a tool, if Nigel gives you a tool, there's no point saying, Nigel, that was great. I really loved your podcast. The tool was really great. If you don't actually put it into practice, right? The tools, you need to
George,
do something with it.
You've hit a nail on the head with me that is so massive that I often share with audiences. So I've spoken to 2.5 million people all over the world, and this is my normal line. If you like me at the end of the presentation and you mark me a 10 and do nothing with it, I'm not that good. Yeah. If you don't necessarily like me, but your business does this and you change your process and you inspire some team, you fire some of your team, you add value, and you mark me naught now, remark me in 21 days' time.
Yeah.
And I'm okay. It buggers up the conference details, but I'm okay with that. But I often tell people, if you love me, do nothing with it, we've wasted our time. We've had a lovely lunch. If you don't like me, because I'm, as you can tell, I'm abrasive, I'm in your face, I'm okay with that because I know I'm going to deliver value. The real line for me, and this is how my life changed, as a motivational speaker, I used to be applause orientated.
Right.
At the end, I'd get a standing ovation and I'd think, I must be marvelous. Then I changed my life. Instead of being applause orientated, I became results orientated.
Yeah.
So you let go of the applause and see what the results look like. The problem is you need big, big self-esteem.
Sure.
Because what you and I both want, we want lots of people sending us 5-star reviews for our podcast, telling us how wonderful we are. The problem is what you really want is, God, I thought Nigel was abrasive. He didn't let George speak very much, but wow, did I get value? Am I doing things differently? The problem is our brain goes, but I'd like you to love me.
No, I'm a kindred spirit. I see that in the projects I run with business. I said, look, my only success metric is that you were successful. If you don't deliver on this business transformation project, I failed. Right? Everything else is secondary. My success is 100% dependent on you guys. But it's also the same with leaders. And I say this to these business people or these business owners. You're only a leader if people follow you, and following you is their choice. Right? They choose to follow you or not. So absolutely, if you can make a connection with your team, if your team can value you and like you and enjoy being in your company, that can help them follow you, right? But I'm not saying you have to be a complete idiot, and be completely abrasive necessarily. But what you have to do is figure out a way that they follow you, and whatever that sustainable way is, if they choose to follow you in a sustainable way, then you're likely to have success as a leader.
But that's where it comes down to communication. So, if you have an autocratic leader who is what I call a lion, the lion's role, if you understand the animal kingdom, is that they hunt or they sleep and they mate, okay? But when they hunt, I don't know if you've ever seen a hunt go on, the communication beforehand is amazing. And they don't go halfway through a hunt and they go, hold on, stop there, we need to have a quick meeting. Let's have a little chin wag, make sure we all know what we're doing. The plan of the lionesses is they circle, they know where they're going, and the male lion's role is to keep control of his territory and make sure no one takes his turf. That's what their main role is, and occasionally bring down one of the big animals. The problem is with most lion leaders are they act like seagulls in management meetings. And seagulls will fly into a meeting, fly really low, shit on people and fly out again. And the problem with seagull management is that's what they've been taught by their previous leader. So lions, if they understand they've got a group of people, they've got a loud voice, they're booming, they've got to understand there are other animals in the zoo. So, you know, we have monkeys. I'm a classic monkey. I'm a bit all over the place. I don't have much of a structure. I've got lots of energy. I'm creative. I need some discipline, but I can be a bit of a maverick. So we've got the lions who are roaring. You've got the monkeys who are jumping up and down the trees. And then you have the elephants who are left-brained, process-driven, who it takes a bit of time to get going. But if they follow an agenda and a system, they'll be great. The problem is they're a bit slow.
Yeah.
You know, an elephant will find water for 50 years that it's followed the same track. It's not racing there, but it will get there eventually. And then you've got the dolphins who are very sweet and natured, and they're chirping along and they're making noises, and there's a family pod, and they want to make sure the rest of the world is looked after. But you've got these four different animals in the workplace, and the role and the job, you're like this, is to become the zookeeper. Because the zookeeper's role in the zoo, the zookeeper's role in the workplace is to feed the right food to the right animals at the right time. So, you know, when I share about communication, I say, if you want to be a phenomenal leader, you've got 3 other animals in your zoo that isn't your style. So, you know, when I had a finance company, this is hard for you to understand this. I had a finance company with 75 staff, and I had no idea I had these other animals. So I just pop into people's office when I fancied, and I put my face underneath there and say, hi, how's it going? Well, that didn't half upset the elephants and the lions. I would sometimes make tea for people, and they go, what are you doing? You're the boss. Well, I was having a cup of tea. I thought you might like. It didn't seem right. It took me 20 years to understand that zookeeping and leadership are identical. That, you know, the zookeeper's role is to go into the pen, find out the food they want at their time. The problem is if you have a massive lion and a massive monkey who are on opposite ends. So I come into a meeting a few minutes late. It's all right. We'll get the work done. And the lion's been there at 2 minutes before 12 going, well, we started at 11:59 and 59 seconds. You were late. You're being disrespectful. Really? One of us has got to get to the zookeeper and say, look, Nigel, if you want to make an impression with George, make sure you turn up on time. And I'm thinking, 4 minutes, it's okay. The world hasn't changed.
Yeah.
But what it looks like is I've been disrespectful. The elephant was there from last week with his notes. You know, he's been sitting there for a week, hasn't had a water break for 3 days because he's got his notes and he's got his agenda and he's got his memorandum of articles of association. He's read all the minutes of the previous meeting and can't understand why I'm asking a question that's clearly in the paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
And the dolphins are just going, can we just all play nice?
Yeah.
Well, if you understand leadership, and I've shared this before many times, that we lead people, but we manage things.
Yes.
So you manage a project, but you have to lead people. You can't lead a project and you can't manage people. And when people understand that at its most fundamental, that people need to be led. They need to be clear on where they're going. And if this leader is out there on the savannah and no one's following them, he's not a leader. It's better, you need better followership skills than better leadership skills. If you want to run a project, you better understand that there are people in your team who haven't got a clue what the project's about. So how do you make it simple for me? I'm very good at one-step projects. I can turn up on a Zoom meeting, but I haven't read the notes. So at least I'm here. Right. So let's turn up on time. I've made someone happy. Now, ask me a question. But I won't have read pages of the notes. The elephants will have done, which either means I'm disrespectful or they should not have sent me so many notes because I'm never going to read them. Mm-hmm. So I don't know why it's a surprise. So you can imagine when I had a finance company and I had an in-house accountant and then we were doing an IPO and I turn up in a meeting and go, so what's happening then? Well, you just watch this freak out going on. I didn't know then why you're supposed to have prepared some notes and why they want them 3 weeks in advance of a quarterly board meeting. I'd turn up and think, we've done all right. We're up on last month. And they go, Bo, how much? Well, more than we did last month. That's what I thought was acceptable.
Yeah.
20 years on, I now know, and I have a CEO who's my chief elephant officer who runs everything behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't want to talk to anybody because she doesn't like talking, but she's got all the systems in place. So every salesperson needs an elephant. Every line needs a dolphin to make sure they understand. So I have a note, you don't know this, but on my computer, there's a note just above your head that says, please love me. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise I can just go on and rant. And I need to understand the people I'm talking to, they need some respect. They need a bit of love. They need a bit of tenderness. Because that's what happens with monkeys. We just get super excited. And entrepreneurs, the Richard Bransons of the world, are the monkeys.
Yeah.
The Elon Musks are a bit of an elephant, not the greatest personality, but he's got some great stuff. The Bill Gates, some great stuff, but you can't communicate with the guy because it's all it's all facts and figures. And you're going to tell me, what do you do at the weekend? Well, I work. So we've created a model that is very, very simple. Even when we wrote the book, and I'm now losing my book, even when I wrote a book, I did the book. I'm not even going to sell it. Don't worry. There's colored paper for the monkeys. There's not many words for the lions. There's a graph for the elephants.
Yeah.
And we printed it on recycled paper for the dolphins. Yeah. We wrote a book in the language of the people we're dealing with. If you think of most business books, they're written by lion/elephants for lions and elephants.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. And so here's something that's really important to me is we need to tell the viewer that none of this stuff that we're talking about is because Nigel woke up one day and thought it was a good idea, thought it was really cute, right? Or George thinks that, never mind about, the purpose of business. We're all here to work as a team. No, this is the stuff that works, right? You can do it the command and control way. You can do it, I'm a lion and screw everyone else. It just won't give you the results, right? What the stuff that we're talking about here is not because we think it's a cute idea or we think it's right or whatever. It's because in our combined experience of like 100 years that we've got, it's the stuff that will get you the results. And I think that's really important to reinforce for people, because sometimes they think, oh yeah, a consultant fell in love with a fun idea and that's it. But it's not that. This is the stuff that works, isn't it?
Well, it's even harder for me that when I had a commercial finance company and I had ECI Venture Capital in my business and we were about to do an IPO, I didn't know any of this. And if I had have known, I would have saved millions. But I didn't understand that my board, who were lions and elephants, wanted something. And we fell out majorly. And I resigned from my own business with 1 month's money to start all over again. When I created my wealth the second time, and I realized that when I work with people in their language, the results were phenomenal. So I've had experience. And in the middle of all that, I used my Bentley as a mini cab because I had no money. But I had an opportunity to do something different. What's really interesting, that before Uber days and before that, when I had my minicab, forget the car that it was, because it was a nice car, but I always made sure there was a newspaper in the back, and I made sure there was water in the back, and I made sure I opened the door.
Yeah.
If you apply that to most of your customers and you go 5% further than your competition, and you're pleasant and you're polite and you've got good attitude, but you can't teach that. This is the whole problem. You can't teach nice, but you can teach skills. Mm-hmm. So I want everyone who's listening to think about some of the teams that you work with. Do you like them or do you trust them?
Yeah.
Because I don't have to like you to do this interview, by the way, but I do need to trust you that what's going to happen with this is going to go well. Because you could cut half of this and make me act to sound a complete idiot. But I trust you that's not going to happen. Do I like you to invite you to my family barbecue? I don't know yet. But that's not my biggest problem. I need to know that I trust you. And because Gordon recommended you and I trust him and I like him and I've been to dinner with him, then I trust you. It's then up to you to keep the trust. You don't have to earn the trust. Yes. Now, this is a whole new sphere of leadership. So I trust everyone that I work with until they let me down. I don't like everyone I work with always. My accountant, I trust 1 billion%. I would not want to sit on a plane to Australia for 22 hours. There are people who I really like, who I think would be really fun to sit on a plane with for 22 hours. I would not trust them to go into business with. So I think for everyone who's listening, they need to understand there is a difference between trust and like.
Yeah.
But trust is like pregnancy. You either do trust or you don't, and you either are pregnant or you're not. So when people say to me, I haven't worked in the organization long enough to know if I trust them or not, that means you don't.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be really, really clear. You either trust me or you don't, and I either trust you or I don't.
And since you can't get stuff done until you trust people, what are you doing to discover whether or not you trust them? I mean, are you just going to sit there with your arms folded and somehow wait for an angel or a fairy to come?
But that's what people do.
Yeah, I know.
They're waiting for evidence to see, are you trustworthy? Which means in the meantime, they don't trust you.
Okay.
So here's the first issue about leadership. All of my experience, and I have had so I'm a parent of 2 kids. I've been married 36 years last week. My parents are still alive. I've got a brother. So I have family dynamics. I then got people I've worked with, and I had many, many offices, and I didn't understand this. When I look back, I then think, what could I have done different? When I go back to my tennis coaching days, and I don't know if you play tennis or any racket sports, but if I changed your grip a quarter of an inch, I could change your game in seconds. Mm-hmm. Me shouting you about what you need to do, I just need to look at how you play, trust, and you trust me to say, just turn your wrist an inch or a quarter of an inch, and everything will change. So if I watch and I observe, and then I communicate in your language, I can probably guarantee you have at least 5% more success than you did before you had in the room. And I often share with all of my clients, my job is 2 things. It's going to be a little bit rude here. My job is to make you a little less shit and enhance what you do by at least 5%. Yeah. So if we take 5% off the bottom that way, and I up 5% this way, that's massive growth.
Yes. Well, and so I agree with that. I would take it a step further, which is, going back to your lions in the savannah example, right? So if we've had, tribal knowledge of every 2 weeks we have to go out on a hunt, and we go out on a hunt and we get enough meat, and that lasts us for 2 weeks, and that's how we've done it for generations and generations and generations, right? Our communication can be not optimal, right? Because we all know what we have to do, and it's all embedded in our DNA, right? If all of a sudden, right, a flood comes and the whole world gets changed upside down, our communication has to be absolutely perfect, because everyone's role is changed. All the things they thought that they had to do, it now has to be done. That's what business looks like. Until May or March of 2020, it was like, yeah, for generations, we've run our business like this. We go out, we do this, we bring this money in, we have this margin, this. All of a sudden, boom, everything changed. And so the roles are different now. So the communication has to be different. Someone who was incredibly valuable in February of 2020 is now maybe less valuable. Someone who was less valuable is now more valuable. You're in different markets. Some markets have disappeared. Some suppliers have disappeared. That's where the communication thing is even more important these days, I would argue.
So I was interviewed by one of the world's leading futurists, and he introduced me as, we're going to be speaking with Nigel, who is going to share some of the world's best tips on leadership, and communication is up there. And I went, tell me something that's higher than communication. And he went, we're now going to be speaking with Nigel, who's going to share the number 1 tip there is in leadership. And it was just very interesting. Here was a guy who was he wasn't trying to convince the world, but if you don't have communication, you're relying on all past knowledge. And I have a phrase that says, the past is a place of reference, not a place of residency. So you need to look from the past to understand what we do, but you can't live there because the world is changing. So you've now got a world where I'll say the word Zoom because it's just easier, where Zoom has become part of our DNA.
Yeah.
But it won't always be that way, because do you remember Back to the Future where the guy had a watch and he could talk into it and everyone went, oh, that's just amazing. Well, the hover thing is still not there yet, but I'm sure it might be soon. Okay. So you've got this world where in 10 years' time, you've got things happening with the electric car. You've got people saying, what are we going to do with petrol stations? That's never going to work. Well, they're stopping certain production of vehicles because the electric car is coming, whether we like it or not. Whether we have driverless cars is a separate issue, and I don't want to go into that right now. But things are going to change. Supermarkets and the way of the world is changing. The dinosaurs, though, are very nervous because they liked it the way it was.
Yeah.
They could see it that way. I have a grandson who is now 8 weeks. When he's 5 or 6, and I say to him, I used to travel 3 hours to have a 1 hour meeting. And he'll go, sorry, why? We wrote letters that we had to drop it into a red box. And then a man on a Friday by 5:30 picked it up, took it on a sorting office that went in a lorry that went 400 miles up a motorway. That the following day will go, why did you do that? And
if kids will watch Postman Pat and they'll be like, what is this?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is there's a role for some of that stuff, because receiving a birthday card or receiving, a book in a shiny envelope is lovely.
Yeah.
But that's an extra.
Yes.
Do you remember a telex?
Yeah.
Do you remember telex? My wife was a telex operator in Israel. Then we had this fax machine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then I said to someone the other day, I said, I've just got rid of my fax number. And they went, what's a fax number? Well, now you've got, photocopies, and we're scanning documents. Everything's going to change over the next 20 years. We know that. What we just don't know is how our communication is going to have to change, because we've not had to deal with it so far. But I'm telling everyone who's listening to this today, your message is not being heard by a minimum of 50% of the people you're communicating with. So you go to any dinner party and 50% of your friends will be going, so what does he do?
Yeah.
I don't understand. The problem is they're not saying it out loud. Yeah. They're just internalizing, going, well, I'm never going to meet him again. But imagine you're in the workplace and you've got 100 staff, and 50 of your people do not get the message that from next week, we're going to be using blue lorries, not red lorries.
Yeah.
And then there's a controller going, I need a red lorry for next Thursday. And this guy's saying, no, we don't do that anymore. Yeah. Well, we do. Well, I need to have a chat with someone. Let's have a meeting. Well, they just didn't hear the message properly. So I promise you, when you learn to listen, but the word listen is spelled L-I-S-T-E-N, not L-I-S-T-W-O. So this 2 ears, 1 mouth is not enough anymore, because you've got Instagram, you've got, oh my God, you've got Instagram, now you've got TikTok, and you've got Facebook, and you've got LinkedIn, and you've got podcasts. Yeah. There's so much information, you can't retain it all. So we've got to learn to listen, to filter, to share, but be really fast in the communication and be really focused on who we're talking to, because people don't have the same time.
Sure. So
our kids live in an expectation economy. They just expect things.
Yeah.
The idea of saving, you've got a young child of 7, if I remember rightly. I was listening. Imagine you said to him, if you can wait till you're 18 to have a mobile phone.
Yeah.
I'd like to wait till you're 8, because I did. Well, yeah, you did, because that's how it was. And then 18, before you go on the internet, he's already on the internet. He's already got a tablet of some sort. Yeah. He's already playing computer games. He can do things much faster because his brain isn't going, I better not make a mistake. I just had a friend of mine show me how to do a TikTok video. I felt a bit silly because I'm going, I must be able to do this, But that's just another way of communicating. Then you now got Instagram Live, and now you can have 4 people on a talk. I don't know if you've seen this. You can have 4 people communicating on Instagram.
Yeah.
Well, there's no reason. Do you have a house phone in your house?
No.
So we've still got one, because my mother-in-law will only use the house phone. But very soon, someone can say, so you had a house phone. What did you do with it? So we've got to understand the world is changing, but people aren't adapting fast enough.
Yeah. So my argument, I agree with that. My argument would be that from the beginning of human existence up until recently, you could be a success by being an expert at something, right? Because knowledge was kind of restricted, right? So you could become an expert And just by that expertise, you could be a good lawyer, a good accountant, a good programmer, a good stonemason, a good whatever. And that knowledge could make you successful. From this moment on to the future that we can see, knowledge will not, being an expert will not make you successful unless you are an expert in communication. It's the only expertise that I think will make people successful going forward, because knowledge is everywhere. I mean, I can go on Google and literally the whole of human knowledge is there free for me. So having an expertise, and the world is so complicated that it doesn't mean anything now to say I'm an expert lawyer. I mean, you have to get so into such small slivers before you can discover your expertise, that the only expertise I think that counts at the moment is being an expert in communication, which means, as you said, people understanding the message that you're trying to transmit. That communication doesn't mean being good at speaking, it means them capturing the information.
And or creating a personal brand that people buy into. So you've got the Kardashians, which is a brand. You've got pop stars that become a brand, and that the older lot have got this brand that is so unique. So we have spent the last 2-3 years creating the brand of the zookeeper. It's a zoo around here. We now have an online personality assessment tool. We've now done another book. We've added 9 new animals to the zoo, because what happens when your animals go rogue? So we're creating a brand, because I can turn into a hyena really fast. All this fun-loving, creative stuff. Someone pisses me off, I'm off there.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden now I've gone rogue, and someone's got to bring me back by understanding my needs. So all of a sudden, being a motivational speaker is not enough, and I'm a world-class communicator. I've had to build a brand so people go, well, if you want communication, you better go to Nigel. You want project management, you better go to George. You want this, because branding and communication together is phenomenal. Yeah. Being a great communicator, but no one's heard of you, doesn't work. So when I used to run a boot camp for speakers, so we used to teach how to run a successful speaker business. Mm-hmm. My opening line was, there's only 2 ways to be a great speaker. You need to have a 42-minute phenomenal speech, and you need to be good at marketing. And people would go, yeah, but I'm not very good at marketing. I said, well, then how's people going to hear you? Just having that speech won't be enough. And if you're phenomenal at marketing, but your speech sucks, you're never going to get rebooked. Yeah. So it's the same thing in business. You got this fantastic car, but no one's heard about it. So you need to create marketing or a brand. Yeah. Or you've got phenomenal engineering, but you haven't got it. It's not in the right vehicle.
Yeah.
If you look at Formula One, these cars that go around are brilliant, but there's 2 or 3 that the brand is there, the driver's better. It's got 4 wheels. It's got an engine. It should all be equal play. It's going to be very interesting next year if you're into Formula One, when the rules change and some of the engines are changing, that all of a sudden it's going to be a much different field of operating, which is no different to business now with Zoom.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden we're all out there. Yeah. What's really interesting, though, and I'm going to do something for a second, is when people do this and stop showing up, that people go, well, who is that? And I think people need to realize that you need to be your best. The best version needs to show up, and your personality needs to come through with clarity, with confidence. And you spoke about mindset at the very, very beginning, to understand that you don't have a long time on Zoom to make a first impression. People often ask me, why does my office look like this? Because this is part of my brand. I've got all my animal stuff around. So someone said to me, is this a green screen? I went, I don't think so. But it's part of my brand. And I know people are looking around, but I'm okay with that because that's what I'm trying to project.
Sure.
So the question for everyone who's listening really should be, when I communicate, how many of my words do you think people hear? How many are understood? And how many are actionable? Or am I just spouting words?
Yeah. And I think people need to really, creating a brand, even really simple stuff. 50% of physical shops on the planet will close in the next 18 months, right? People were used to, I had a shop on the high street, people passed, they would come in, they would buy. I have a mechanic business. People would come to me when their cars, people in the neighborhood know that when the car's broken, you go to the mechanic. I have a accountants firm or lawyers, right? I'm in the city. I'm the only one in the small town. That's all gone because everybody's online. So who are you online? Who knows about you? Now, the advantage is that, look, in Brazil, you can be based in the south of Brazil, and you can have someone in Rio de Janeiro can now be a client, right? But the disadvantage of this is someone in Rio de Janeiro is already taking your clients because they have a shop front online. They have a brand online. And your brand online these days, because of the noise that's there, has to be built on value. You can't simply just be there. Like if you had a shop on the high street in Milton Keynes, right? You had the shop on the high street and everyone who passed it would see it and they saw the shop. Now, if you go online, you have to have value that means that your shop front sticks out from someone else's shop front, because they can go to a shop front in Dubai or Auckland, New Zealand, or wherever, that adds more value. So that a brand is about value, and it's about being online, isn't it?
But it's also about making sure that interaction is so phenomenal you'd never want to leave. So, I've been with my accountant 20 odd years because he knows every year is going to get a box of stuff. He's got my password to go into my bank account because I'm never going to do all that paperwork. So I've got to be able to find someone who's as trustworthy, who has the relationship with me. So your job from today is not necessarily building up the brand, it's building up the relationship and trust. Because why would they want to go elsewhere, which is no different to the workplace? If your workplace is an exciting place to be, why would they want to look elsewhere? What's given everyone the opportunity is I can now operate in Rio de Janeiro from today without having to fly all the way around the world if my speech is good enough and my content is good enough. So you've now got So I used to joke with people that I have a fetish for PVC, which is about passion, vision, and communication. So if my passion is there and my vision is there to just tell you where we're going to go and I can communicate it well, I can do that anywhere. Obviously, I love being at a conference live and I can shake some people's hands and ruffle a few feathers, stay for tea and coffee and experience the whole journey. A friend of mine, we were lucky to go to Lithuania in October and we only spoke for 25 minutes, but the joy of just going to an airport and getting on a plane. Now, you won't know this. So I had a brain aneurysm 3.5 years ago because I'd done 162 presentations in 35 countries and my head just virtually exploded. So I'm now able to look after myself, but I still want to get back on a plane and I still want to go and meet people. And I've just got to calm it down a bit because I'm full on, because in my humble opinion, what am I saving the energy for? Yeah. So even when I do a Zoom call or a Teams or I do a WebEx presentation, I want the person to understand I'm going to give them value. They can take this, apply it. So my biggest lesson that I teach people is if you're in the room, be in the room. Yes. And when you're on Zoom, be on Zoom. So here I am with you, and you are the most important person in my life right now. Yeah. And the reason is because you're the person I'm talking to. Yeah. Yesterday, I was with my grandson, who's 7 weeks, who, trust me, was more important than you. Yeah. But not now, he's not, because he's not here. Now, my kids and my wife get upset when I share this, because I'm telling people, when I'm with an audience, they are the most important people, not last week's speech or next week's speech, because I don't know what that's going to be. Yeah. But imagine every interaction, even when you're online, you gave it 100% attention. One of the reasons Amazon does so well is because their attention to detail on an interaction is phenomenal. Yeah. And I use them as a model, not because of how they are, but it's the way they operate. So, you see an item you want, you press a button, and it instantly says confirmed. Now, the money's out your bank account, you don't have the product. Then they send you a second email really quickly or a text. It's out for delivery. And your brain has a dopamine hit by going, oh my God, it's on its way. I'm excited. It's still not there. The money's out your account. And then it's there. It'll be there in 1 hour, 3 minutes. And then it does the best thing ever. Do you know what it does then? It sends you another little note that says, people like you are buying stuff like this. And because your brain's in dopamine mode, you go, well, maybe I should buy this. Now, that concept is that when we are shopping online or we're with our accountant or lawyer, when do they ask us these questions about recommendations and other services? It's 3 weeks later. Too late.
Yeah.
The internet is there to say to people, what do you want now? Because you've come on my website. How do I keep you on my website? Which is, how do I keep you in the room?
Yeah.
So if I started being boring and I turn my video off and I continue talking, good chance you're going to mentally leave the room, think, where's he gone? He obviously doesn't love me. Then a pop-up comes. Would you like, if it's not relevant, why are you doing this? So when I speak to an audience, they're the most important people. They're the heroes in my story. It's about value for them. And if they like me, that's a bonus.
Yeah. So I have a phenomenal story on that as well, of leadership. I completely agree. For 14 years, we did Johnson & Johnson's high potential development programs for their quality, compliance, and regulatory and affines. This worldwide vice president, senior, training people to be C-suite. So we did it for 14 years. And the woman who was responsible for quality, head of quality at Johnson & Johnson, a woman named Kathy Wengel, one of the greatest leaders I've ever had the privilege of working with. And Kathy, head of quality for the whole of J&J, would spend a day, these were like 12-month programs. She would spend a day with the class, right? A whole day. She would speak to them, she would interact and talk with them, with everything that was going on. And these were all people who thought they were incredibly busy, right? And it would always be, how do you find the time? How do you find the time? And she said exactly the same thing. She said, when I'm here with you, I'm here with you, right?
Yeah.
And she was there to model that, right? She would take the breaks and she would go off, and Congress would be calling and she would have to respond to a recall and stuff like that. But she would do it during the breaks like that. But when she was in the class talking to the class, no computer, no cell phone, no nothing. And one day, one year, we had the program, and she actually got promoted to be head of supply chain. She's currently head of Johnson & Johnson's supply chain. And we thought, oh, well, there's no way in the world she could possibly come and spend the day. Not only did she come and spend the day as she always had, she maintained that posture. I mean, she's head of Johnson & Johnson's supply chain. And she was, it would be a 2-hour block before the break. And she was just there only talking to these 24 leaders.
But isn't it strange? But isn't it strange you still remember her over all the other leaders because she was in the room? She was present. She was engaging. She kept her word and you trusted her.
Exactly.
So think about this for everyone who's listening today. When you show up, are you in the room? When you show up, are you being like a zookeeper? When you show up, what are you asking your audience to do or your teams to do? Because if it was something you could have sent by an email, send it by email.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I like doing podcasts is that if it was just a question and answer, well, you might as well send the questions to my PA. She'll do it a bit and she'll send it back to you. Well, that's just not me. But if you want the real nuts and bolts, let's get on Zoom. You'll hear my truth. Sometimes the F word accidentally comes out, but I'm just being me.
Sure.
The question is the same as your phenomenal leader was. She said something, she committed to it, and just because she's been promoted, she's still got her roots. She's still planting her feet on the ground to say, keywords, you matter. And that's all people want. When I talk to an audience and someone says to me, can I email you? And I go, you can email me. You probably won't, but you can email me. Here's my personal email address. Here's my home phone number. I can say that because I know 95% of people will never do it. Yeah. But what they're most shocked about is when somebody does and I ring them back and they go, oh, I didn't think you'd call. I went, well, why did you email me?
Yeah. I do the same thing, but I say to people all the time, send me your questions. I can't help you unless I know what you need help with. And every now and again, someone sends a message on Instagram and then I respond to them. And then I use it in the next program. And they're like, I can't believe you did that. It's like, why wouldn't I? I asked you to get in contact.
But that's the whole point about people are scared of rejection. So the reason why we all love donuts is because donuts never reject us. Okay. So we're scared of, me saying to you, will you do this? And then you don't respond. Well, I knew he wasn't going to respond, so I better not ask again. And that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I say to people, I may not come back to you if I'm on a plane, even though now with 4G and the internet, I probably can. But I will be back to you as soon as I humanly can with an answer if I've got one, or I'll tell you, speak to George because he's cleverer than I am, or speak to Gordon because he's clever. I'm very quick to say to people, if I can support you, I will. But I can do that because I know most people will never do it, which is tragedy beyond belief.
Yeah, I completely agree. Gordon, this has been valuable, informative, and fun. Thank you ever so much. It's been such a pleasure talking with you. Any final words of wisdom that you want to leave people with? What's the most important thing that you can leave them with?
Wherever you are, be there. Just be in the room and understand that the person you are connecting with, it may be the only connection they've got that day. You may be that person who just lets that person know they're a human being, and human connection is so important. So if you say you're going to call someone, call them. If you say you're going to respond to someone, respond to them. And even if you don't have an answer, just say, I still love you. I just don't have an answer yet. So thank you for allowing me some time on your podcast. I look forward to receiving it, seeing it. If I can support anyone out there, email me, telephone me, whatever you want to do.
What's the easiest way for people to get in contact with you?
Nigel at nigelrisner.com. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. And I'm a monkey, so I'm always on there because I get bored really quickly. So I respond. People are surprised. I respond very quickly.
Great. Thank you ever so much. It's been a real pleasure, and we hope to have the opportunity to have you back soon.
Delighted.
Thank you.